What we're looking at today is the gradient intercept equation, which is y is equal to mx plus b. Now, in your books, please write down y equals mx plus b. Then write down that the letter m actually represents the gradient, which is the steepness of this line. It's represented by a lowercase m before the x, and the plus b at the end is what we call the y-intercept, where the line intersects the y-axis. Okay? So we're going to have a look at this in more detail in a second, but please write this down before I move on. For example 14, find the gradient and y-intercept of the line with the equation of all these. So just remember that y equals mx plus b, where this is your gradient, this is your y-intercept. So for part A, the gradient, which is the number before the x, is number 4, and the y-intercept, which is the b, is simply the minus 7. Okay, it's the number after the x. All right, question B. The gradient in this case before the x is the number half. Your y-intercept is the positive 3. So we can write 3. Now for question C, see how this is not rearranged in the form mx plus b. Instead of it's b plus mx really, I can actually switch these two around. Okay, if I box them, if I switch those around, I can get negative 5x plus 3. So you can see this in the same format as what's above, so that the gradient in this case is negative 5 and b is positive 3. For question D, the equation says y equals 3x over 4 minus 1. You can see this as also 3/4 of x, so you can write that x on the numerator separately in the middle, in the same level as the vinculum, or that division line, minus the 1, so that the gradient is actually represented by this, okay? And that is 3/4, whereas our y-intercept is negative 1. Okay, I hope that makes sense to you. We're going to move on to example 15. Example 15, write the equation or line that has gradient of negative 4 and y-intercept of negative 6. So the equation of this line is y equals mx plus b. The gradient in this case is negative 4, so I'm going to write this as m, and the y-intercept is negative 6, and this is our b. So by replacing m here by that negative 4, I get negative 4x, and plus b is simply negative 6. And that's our equation of the line. Let's move on to example 16. Example 16 says to graph each linear equation by finding the gradient and y-intercept first. So if I wanted to find out or graph the first equation, y equals to 2x minus 1, the gradient is simply the number 2 before the x. The y-intercept is negative 1. And let me just turn on my grid paper, okay, so that we can graph this properly. So in order to graph any of these kind of equations using gradient and y-intercept, we start with the y-intercept, which is on the y-axis. This is where the line that we draw will intersect the y-axis. So we'll put negative 1 right here. Okay? Then the gradient of 2, this actually means the same thing as 2 over 1, where this is your rise and this is your run. So we're going to rise by 2, meaning we're going to go up here by 2, okay, right there, and then run by 1, which means go right by 1, right there. And we're going to put a point there, and we're going to join that y-intercept that we have before with that new point that we just drew, connect it together, and just make sure you have arrows at the end, and there's your line. For question B, your gradient in this case is the number before the x, which is negative 2. And that can be written as negative 2 over 1. I prefer to write it as a fraction. Then the y-intercept is the positive 5. And just remember that this is your rise over your run. And we start off by drawing b as 5, which is our y-intercept. So if I count 5 squares upwards, I'll be right there, okay, on my y-axis. And then what I do is I have to rise by -2, which means I go down by -2. So if I go down by -2, I'll be here at 3. But I also have to run by 1, which means I have to move right by 1. So that's here. So if I join those 2 points up, I get that straight line, like that. And I put arrows at the end of those lines, and that's it. All right, question C. In question C, I've got y is equal to 3/4 of x minus 2. So my gradient in this case is 3/4. My y-intercept is -2. So I'll plot -2 on the y-axis like that. But my gradient says to rise by 3 and run by 4. So if I rise by 3, I'll be up here, which is the number 1. Then run by 4 means go right by 4. So I'll be 4 to the right. So that point there would be over here. So if I now connect it with this y-intercept at -2, I'll get this straight line, and that resembles 3/4 of x minus 2. Okay, and just make sure that you draw arrows at the end. And that's it. That's how you draw a line.